I think we can all agree, Viva UCT, that's fine. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to SOAS. Not that you need welcoming because you've been here all this time. I'm extremely honoured to be here as an old debater myself, very old debater from Liverpool University, which is rather thin on the debating stage these days, but there it is. We were very strong when I was there. So strong, we all got rusticated, but leaving that aside, what I would say is that I think the debate is the key to life. And it is, debating is an absolutely fundamental core skill of any society. And the more we bury ourselves in our laptops, and the less we speak to each other, the more dangerous the world becomes. So it is a fantastic thing that people are equipping themselves with the capacity to express an argument, to espouse a thought, even if it's one which they might personally not actually agree with. But that is a great skill. And I think that basically our political lives will be greatly enriched. Our political lives will be greatly enriched if some of our political masters had experienced what you've experienced these last 2 days. It's a great tribute to SOAS. They've been able to execute, yes, execute 6 rounds with 106 different competing parties. This is an amazing achievement. And it speaks very well of SOAS and very well of the wonderful competing teams from across the world. I'm not going to waste your time any more on this because we've got real, very fascinating business to do. I believe that the motion that was adopted tonight is one of the most challenging motions that I think I have seen yet put to a student body, and I wish all the contestants well. And I'm going to ask, therefore, to espouse the proposition. First off, I want to hear, please, from Daniel Brown.
Thank you very much. I think today I'm here to promote a cause near and dear to the hearts of everyone here. To remove this horrible and unjust ban on 12-year-olds carrying assault weapons. I was expecting a bit less support, because after all, I'm talking to a group of people whose life experiences don't really match those of the vast majority of people who seek to become soldiers at that age. I mean, I think most of us here didn't have to scavenge for food or take care of our family at 12. We didn't have to hide in a dung pile when soldiers came by to try and rape our sister. I think fundamentally here, we have to also realize that the people who wrote these international treaties, whether in the West, who are Westerners, or in these countries who are Western educated, generally did not have to go through these experiences either. What I'm going to do here today is I'm going to propose that we actually look at what's actually happening in these places. And not only that we first of all lift the absolute ban on child soldiers. Secondly, that the United States, Britain, and the French, if they want to get over their love affair with various genocidal people in the region, will get together to help train in many of the UN refugee camps, starting in Eastern Congo, but also eventually including Nigeria and elsewhere, boys and girls ages 12 to 16 into local militia groups that can protect their local communities and help fight off the roving guerrilla bands. Of a new African state system at the level at which it should be built, at the local and not at the national. I want to begin by looking at I'm going to do 4 things. I'm first going to look at what our proposal specifically is. I'm secondly going to look at sort of the requirements many of these people have and sort of the challenges faced by this. And then I'm going to look at how this fulfills our goals in the region, how it protects women and helps change views of them. Well, because we're going to be doing both. How it promotes communities and protects many of the most vulnerable groups in Africa who are victimized. And finally, how it achieves the goal of helping to build up state infrastructure there at the local level. Now, obviously what I just laid out is basically the thing. We're going to be taking volunteering 12 to 16-year-old boys and girls at these refugee camps and giving them military training. Whether it's initially martial arts, but we're also going to form them into local defense groups that we think are going to be able to protect them. Sure.
Under your model, are you willing to accept that children who otherwise would not be targets will now probably be attacked by rebel groups or the army?
By the way, those who have no swords can still die from them. 13 is definitely old enough to be killed in one of these refugee camps. It's old enough to be carried off by rebels in these refugee camps. It's old enough, if you're female, to be raped by people coming in. These folks recognize that they have a fundamental right to protect themselves, and at the point at which the UN, at best, is temporarily mitigating the danger, we have an obligation to go further. We think that fundamentally many of these people face these sort of challenges, which is that there is no good law. Right now, the closest thing we have protection is the UN. But the UN itself, many of their peacekeepers have been convicted and found of crimes there. Furthermore, what the UN has demonstrated consistently both there and in Bosnia is that when rebel groups are particularly determined to come in, there's nothing they can do to stop them from grabbing kids or engaging in rape or anything else. At best, they're a minor deterrent for a couple of local brigands. We think that fundamentally that this fails in our humanitarian mission to these regions. It prevents any sort of development of any local economy or anything else. And furthermore, it prevents these kids from having more than these kids because their childhood is stolen away at these ages. Sure.
So why don't you just send in, like the U.S. military or NATO or blue helmets?
Because that's simple. Two reasons. One, because there are not going to be enough places at once, which is one of the problems with the UN. But secondly, any presence there is going to be temporary. One of the problems with our support for Afghanistan is we haven't taught them to protect themselves. I don't think anyone here seriously thinks the West will still be in Afghanistan 10 years from now. The public support isn't there. What's going to happen to all the women then? I think leaving lasting things is good. And now I want to talk about my three sort of how it promotes these things. Not right now. I think first of all, I think this helps protect women. 12 to 13, unfortunately, is the age at which women start to face become serious targets for rape in the region. We think part of the reason for this is that women are viewed as especially vulnerable. They're not seen as being able to protect themselves. They're not people to be taken seriously. They're not people we should pay any attention to. We think a decision to arm them and give them the ability to defend themselves, not just with firearms, but also, for instance, teaching martial arts, giving them, for instance, knives and other things, will strongly discourage people. Even if a couple of them are killed in the defense, we think people might argue it's better. We think that will deter other rebels because they'll no longer be a soft target that people think they can get to freely. Not right now. We secondly think that's going to protect communities because we think the UN has failed in this. It's failed, as we mentioned, to protect the women in them from their own troops. But furthermore, the Rwandan army has repeatedly been able to cross into Congo, raid in these camps, and the UN, because they're stuck with pistols, haven't been able to do anything about it in all seriousness. When the Serbs wanted to do a massacre, they couldn't. We think fundamentally that these communities are being torn apart by these sort of attacks, and not only will this provide a sense of community in terms of joint military training, but it will also allow them to better protect themselves from this and protect some of the people who can't help themselves. Finally, we think it's going to help build institutions. We think a large part of this is that one of the problems Africa has faced is there's no local security. We've dealt with it at the state level when many of these states are imagined. I've heard the term imagined communities, they're imagined governments altogether. The government of Congo has no real authority. It is a bribe collection agency for all practical purposes. This isn't just unique to Congo, it's everywhere. And part of the reason for this is because we've had those same sort of Western educated people trying to impose Western norms and govern them. But if you look at the West, countries 300 years ago were small. It was local communities of people working together who eventually built up. Democracy starts at the local level. Community starts at the local level. Businesses, economy comes, and all of these things depend on security. We think that this plan, if it restores security to the Congo area and the rest of Africa, and maybe even on a more expansive level, it will effectively allow the economy to start up. It will allow people to settle permanently, raise families, and gain some sort of basis of normality that can eventually